Part 2. So on this one, what we're going to be talking about is a little bit more things that are more directly related to the kind of scenarios that we would be presented. The other one was more like general concepts to talk about, but this time is more things that we may see. But again, keep in mind that infectious disease is not that common, and not that it's not like common, but the majority of the people deaths that would be related to this will be from the disaster himself. So from the trauma, from burns or anything like this. That's what kills most people in disaster. Those other ones here, infectious disease, can come more in the late phase, so phase 2 to phase 3, and they are more related to problems that we'll see. Overcrowding is one of them. So if you're, because you're the only house that is still standing, you could have like people basically that are more into your place and stuff. And so some of the disease that you can have with overcrowding, or even because you're in a camp and groups of people have to gather together because there's not many place to stay in by. So if you can avoid it, then you can decrease your chance of getting those mostly those disease. But if you're not, if you can't, then there's other places, and we'll talk a little bit more about another video about the preventions of those ones. But here are like some of the disease that you may encounter. So the measles is one of them that's been talking in the news and stuff, and there's the whole like should I get vaccination or not. But here what we're talk about is that most of the outbreaks are brought by under vaccination groups that are exposed. So basically those are quotes straight from the CDC website. Because if you don't have a case of measles, then the case are pretty low. Like if you look at during the little and the small outbreak, and it was an outbreak more than a big endemic, there was like 7 or 10 cases I think, and then went across. And those people, I mean, they did travel, they got in contact with other people and stuff like that, and out of that there was only about 10 cases. So it could be a problem. But again, if you have your vaccination, which I think is the best defense for a lot of those disease, when there's a vaccination available, then it would be a good place to start. And so again, start vaccination first, and then try to avoid overcrowding spot. Meningitis is one of them. Those happen more often. I mean, I still see them even on the fairly regular basis in emergencies, and so it is a possibility that could happen. There's about 4,000 cases of bacteria, including 500 deaths, occurring each year between 2003 2007. Again, those are from the CDC web page, and so that's still pretty case. And so again, if you put all those people and there's one case of meningitis that's going there, you could have like a pretty severe outbreak out of that. So again, prevention is the best way of preventing those ones. Diarrheal illness, I won't talk too much about it. The reason is that I'm going to do a separate video just on that one, because it is a big topic, and it's such a an important component of it that it makes his way to having his own talk and everything. So I won't talk about, but diarrheal illness is an important part of the disease of overcrowding, and also from other TB. There's there was a total case, about 9,000 cases that was reported in 2013. It's been in decline since for a while now, and it's been treated as well. Two issue with the TB is that during a disaster, because this is a chronic disease, meaning that let's say you have an acute case of it. The treatment of it can still take 6 months to a year. 6 months to a year of antibiotics and different treatment. So if you're in the midst of that, so let's say you're second month of it, and suddenly the disaster happened, and then you don't have your supply of antibiotics for that, and you're not as followed and everything, then you could retransmit the disease. So that's one of the issues that could happen with tuberculosis. But there was a case study, and I'll put the link down, out of for Katrina, and out of all the thing that they saw and all from all the data, only 4 new cases out of Katrina was reported. So out of all the problem that it created and all the people they lost track of and or they refound and give antibiotics and stuff, only 4 new cases came out of that. So that's pretty reassuring. And again, if you're caught up at the right time and during Katrina and everything, people were able to be getting on the antibiotics. The only one of the issue with the tuberculosis is a lot of now there's the super tuberculosis, basically, that is resistant to almost anything that we throw at it. Those cases are mostly in developing country. They're not in her part of the woods, but I mean they're increasing in case, and they're becoming a major problems. But I think, yeah, in the disaster it could be a case, but based on what I've saw of Katrina, it was pretty interesting. And I mean, tuberculosis can kind of be, it's a disease that spread very easily, but it's very easy also to recognize. And so if you stay away from those kind of people and isolate yourself pretty well, then it'll be pretty easy to do that. And we'll talk a little bit later more about respiratory disease and diarrheal disease in different videos. Bubonic plague, the last epidemic, was in 24 through about 1925 in Los Angeles, and it was spread from the urban rats. But there's still some case now in northern New Mexico, northern Arizona, southern Colorado, California, Oregon, and in Nevada. So if you live any of those zones there, again, those have higher reservoir, so that means it could become an issue if there's a disaster that happens there and you're stuck in one of those regions. So I would recommend that you follow like the CDC webpage. Again, those are all statistics and things out of the CDC pages. So I would recommend that you follow that through and get either a map of the disease and check where it is, if it's near you and stuff, and read more on how to recognize bubonic plague or how you can prevent getting bubonic plague and the signs and symptoms, and so you can stay away from people and preventions and stuff like that if you live in those zones. I'm not near one of those zones, so obviously it's not that much important for me in my prep, but for the people that live near there, I would be highly recommend that you follow on to it. And vector-borne disease, here it's important that it really depends on different disaster, and so some of them will have like say you have a lot of water. So again, if you have like a storm, something like this, they may increase the number of because all that water, when it recedes, it stays in pools, and so now you have increased number of mosquitoes, and so whatever is in the reservoir that year that can be transmitted by mosquitoes, you can have a higher hand of that. If you have more like an earthquake or something like that, some of the rats or things like that can be flushed out, or be present in part of the city that were not there before, and so now they bring also their vectors as them. So vector-borne disease are very important to understand of what they have, and I'll do a video on some of them later on, especially one that is very important that it's not very well talked about, but I'll be talking a little bit more about that. But yeah, understanding how some of the vector-borne disease are in your area is very important, because again, the reservoir can be displaced because of the disaster himself. Some dermatologic condition that follow some disaster, MRSA, Vibrio, especially in Katrina. Those are mostly all my reading. That's why I got MRSA, Vibrio vinificus, and Vibrio parasomoliticus. I'm just going to mention them here because I'm going to do a video a little bit more on those and the treatment, because I'm still reading about it, so it's not but they're disease that happen a lot, and some of them, actually most of them, the Aquacel AG could be a good recommendation. So because they're mostly dermatologic, so obviously dermatologic means skin disease, and so if you would have a rash of any sort, you could probably put the Aquacel AG on those ones and treat it. But we'll be talking a little bit more when I talk about treatments and things like that. One that most people don't talk about is mold. So obviously, if you have a water again, so a flood or something like this, or even an earthquake that basically burst a pipe, and then now you have water in your basements or something like this, you have molds, and more molds can be just having the molds in there can liberate some spores in the air, and then you can have, so there's a lot of people, especially people with HIV, cancer patient, or asthma and things like that, can be more sensitive to mold. So it's kind of important to talk a little bit about it. And so how to recognize molds is basically by sight. So if you see them on the wall, ceiling, discoloration, or the smell, the smell like bad odor, and I'm sure we all smelled something like when we go in the basement and stuff, that kind of odor of like kind of raw or something like that, musty, earthy smell, or foul stench. So if you smell that, that means there's a zone for mold, and so if I would go back there, I would be either wearing a mask or something like that. So those are kind of important to recognize because of that. So this was my my part 2. Hopefully you liked it, and I'll talk to you soon.